Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PreLaw Magazine Symposium on Choosing Your Law School. My name is Andrew Legia, and I'll be your host today. We have a great lineup for you today, with 4 sessions featuring some of the most distinguished deans in legal education. Before we get started, I want to recognize some of our sponsors: University of Georgia School of Law, University of Houston Law Center, UConn School of Law, and Southern University Law Center. We invite you to listen and visit with them at any time today at their virtual booths. This is a great opportunity to ask questions and get feedback. Our first session is Best Value Law Schools, and I'm pleased to introduce the moderator, Richard Moberly, Dean and Professor of Law of Nebraska College of Law.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Welcome, everyone. We are so happy for you to be here today. I've got a great panel. We are all excited to talk with you about what it means to be a best value law school and why that should matter to you. I know the people on this call we're fortunate enough to be at universities and colleges of law that are regularly listed in this best value ranking.
I thought it said turn off your video.
Sorry, Andrew.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. So we're glad you're here, and I'm going to take a moment to introduce my panelists, and then we're going to jump right into some questions that we've prepared that we think you'll be interested in, but we'll have time at the end for you to answer questions. And of course, feel free to use the Q&A function, and I'll try and monitor that. And if we're in a section and you have a question about that, we can stop and we'll take it. We're hoping to have kind of a robust discussion here today. So I don't know what the order are of people on your screen, but I'm going to go alphabetically. So Mark Brandon is the Dean and Thomas E. McMillian Professor of Law at the University of Alabama School of Law. And then Laura Majorowski is the Director of JD Admissions at the University of Connecticut School of Law. Laura Rosenberry is the Dean and Level 11 Professor of Law at the University of Florida, Levin College of Law. Then last but not least is Bo Rutledge, who's the Dean and Herman E. Talmadge Chair of Law at the University of Georgia Law School. So this is a great group. We have a lot of different perspectives from all over the country on what it means to be a best value law school and why that might matter to you. So I thought I'd start with kind of what begs the question of this is, why does being a best value law school matter? What does it mean to you all to be a best value law school? And why should low tuition and low debt matter to a law student? So I'm going to, each question I'll pick off someone to start, and then we'll all just kind of jump in. So Bo, let me start with you with that question. Why does it matter to you?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Richard. And let me welcome all those who are joining by the webinar. If there's one thing that I remember, if there's one thing that you remember, that I say today, it is the term professional freedom. Because I think at the end of the day, professional freedom captures in 2 words why best value should matter to you as somebody who's attending or planning to attend law school. You may be like me, where I attended law school and I really didn't know what I want to do. And over the course of the time of study, and certainly in the time beyond, learned that there are a variety of things that lawyers do, some of which are incredibly fulfilling, some of which are not, some of which pay extraordinarily well, and some of which do not. And so to go at a school that is laser focused on preparing you for a job at the lowest possible cost is going to preserve your professional freedom. On the opposite end of the extreme, maybe you know exactly what you want to do when you're going to attend law school. If you want to go into government public interest work, the debt value that you graduate with is of incredible importance in terms of your ability and your family's ability for that job to be both professionally filling and economically viable. And even if you know that you want to go to work for a large firm that may pay $180,000 or more per year, it seems like every month, and I suspect this is true of all of us, we have students who sort of say, I've done that for 2 or 3 years, and now I really want to go become a prosecutor, or I really want to go become a public defender, or hang out a shingle, or become an entrepreneur. And if you or your spouse are graduating with $250,000, or I've had folks at other schools who may have collectively $500,000 in debt, those 2 or 3 years at the big firm may actually prove to be quite an impediment to the realization of you and your partner realizing what you want to do. And the last thing that I'll sort of say is this. The other reason why that professional freedom matters is not just after law school, but when you're in law school. So I think one of the most significant transformations I've seen in legal education since I attended there 25 years ago is the absolute explosion in clinical, experiential, term time, summertime externships that you can do nearby or everywhere. And those too will oftentimes come with a cost, whether it's the cost of a plane ticket, an additional apartment, or just the incidental costs of parking and meals that come when you may not be in Gainesville or Tuscaloosa or Connecticut or Lincoln or Athens, but you're in New York or DC. And so to think that you can have those experiences and at the same time not be paying through your teeth on tuition may be the difference between your ability to have those term time experiences and not. So I hope that answers the question.
Great, thanks, Bo. Anybody else want to jump in?
I might add one thing, and that is that lower cost means less financial stress during law school, and less financial stress often means less emotional stress during law school. The process of going through law school is a challenging one in and of itself. So if you can mitigate the stresses financially, then that's a great benefit, it seems to me. But I guess one other thing to circle back to something that Bo had said, and that is the word value. The best value assumes that you're getting something that is valuable in your legal education. So pay attention to cost, pay attention to the quality of the preparation and legal instruction that you'll be getting in your law school of choice.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. Well, actually, Mark, let me ask you just a quick follow-up. And I think I saw Laura unmute, so I'll go to her in just a second. But a quick follow-up. How do you think students can measure quality? The numbers are kind of easy on tuition in some respects, but how would you suggest students do that?
I think there are several metrics, if that's the right word, several ways of evaluating the quality of law school's instruction or the services that a law school provides. One is the depth and breadth of the curriculum that the school provides, and by those things, I mean not just getting black letter law, not just doctrinal exposure, but also exposure to policy, history, values, the things that are kind of the glue that holds law together. Second, what kind of teaching and mentoring do you get? Not just teaching in the classroom, but the kind of professional mentoring that professors often provide, and alumni and lawyers outside the law school can provide. Size matters. Not everybody has the same priors on what the sweet spot on size is, but pay attention to the size of law school that feels right for you. Often smaller size means you get to know all of your classmates. That's a valuable thing. Often small size means you've got a lower student faculty ratio. That's a good thing. Makes contact with faculty not just possible but unavoidable, and that is a good that's a good thing. Think about culture. Every law school has its own culture, and often students are the creators of and participants in the culture. Some experiences are pretty edgy and competitive. Other experiences are very laid back and comfortable. And then you find law schools that are kind of in, I guess, what I would consider a sweet spot in the middle, which is an environment that's supportive and competitive, but it's competitive without being destructive. And so, but pay attention to where your heart is on the culture. Bar passage, employment coming out of law school obviously has an impact on the quality of your experience. the investment in career services is important as well. And there are there are some things that are often overlooked in thinking about quality of life, like strength of academic support. Is there a strong academic support program? Psychological well-being. Do you have access to not only the college or university's resources, but does the law school provide psychological support? Financial support in the event of emergencies, God forbid. If you do experience an emergency, are there resources available for you? That's just, it's kind of a laundry list of things that I would think about.
Yeah. That's good. It's comprehensive. I think that's, and we'll talk perhaps later, we can show students where they might find some of that information. But for now, let me turn it over to Laura. Did you want to jump in, and maybe Lauren, if you had something?
I would just briefly say that one way to summarize or combine a lot of what has already been said is, value is about maximizing return on investment. And, law school will be an investment of time, of emotional energy, and also money. And so thinking about what you will get in return for that investment, both during the 3 years of law school and then afterwards, is something to really focus on as you make your decision about where to go to law school.
And then just quickly to tie some things together that, again, have already been said, value, there are objective indicators of value. And we've talked a lot about that in terms of your salary to debt ratios, cost of attendance, things like that. But then remember, there are also subjective standards for what is valuable to you too. And Mark touched on a lot of that in terms of what's the class size that you're going to thrive in? What is the environment that you're going to thrive in? What are your individual goals? Are you looking to head to big law in a major metropolitan area? Are you looking to hang out your own shingle? So, value definitely has two branches, both the objective indicators as well as very personal and subjective indicators that require some self-reflection.
Some of the eye of the beholder sort of thing. That's great. Thanks, Lauren. Okay, well, let's switch slightly. And Laura, let me come to you and say, well, aside from this kind of lower debt to income ratio that we just mentioned, after graduation, how else do schools prepare students to best launch students into the workforce?
Thank you. I think there are three primary categories to think about. One is by offering, a robust office of career and professional development that's connected to the faculty, but also has staff dedicated to helping students through the process of career and professional development. That's one. A second is a robust alumni network and mechanisms to connect students to those alumni. And then finally, third would be opportunities to spend time, including a full semester, as Bo mentioned, in intensive externships, like really getting a sense of what it's like to be a lawyer before you go out into the workforce. And, and I think all three of these are important, and they are connected to one another. But it starts generally with the Office of Career and Professional Development. And, those offices do two primary things. One, provide information about different legal markets and different types of legal practice. And this is particularly important for students who don't have lawyers in their family, right? So, at UF Law, about 20% of our students are first generation college students. So that means they certainly don't have any lawyers in the family. And then about a total of 70% of our students are first generation professional. So we want to make sure we can provide the information about the practice of law, not just the substance of each individual class and Black letter law and history and policy, but also what does it mean to practice law? And then in addition to that information, there needs to be coaching and, helping each student find their own, personalized strategic plan for success, because each person's goals will be different. And then once it starts at that, career services level, then, the career services advisors and coaches can connect students with alums and in various markets and practice areas, and also help students find those field placements and externships that will help them, it's their summer jobs, and then the externships that will help them be able to make the right decision upon graduation.
That's great, Laura. Thanks. Anyone else want to add to that? Oh, all right. So I told them they didn't have to jump in on each question, and they're taking me seriously. Or Laura, your answer was so comprehensive. Well, let me ask the other panelists just to follow up on that. Is, I think we all would agree with what Laura said and how you think about it. If I'm in the shoes of somebody in the audience, how do I find that the specific information, not that stuff, we'll do that later with reports and such, but the type of information that Laura was talking about with your schools, how would somebody find out the type of support that you provided? Lauren?
Sure. Of course, I'm going to plug admissions offices, given that I'm a director of admissions. The great thing about your admissions offices is that they are liaisons, and they can connect you to individuals in other offices. Oftentimes, admissions professionals are the gateway into the rest of the law school community. Naturally, we all have websites, and you will, on almost every website, be able to immediately find the career planning services that are available. But I cannot stress enough that admissions professionals, what we're here to do is to talk to prospective students to get you the answers to your questions. And so I'm a little biased, but I think admissions office is always a great place to start.
Great plug. I like it. Mark, Bo, anything to add to that?
Sure. I say amen to talking to admissions offices. The officers in admissions all over, in law schools all over the country are professionals, and they're not only good at crunching numbers, but they're also good in human relations frequently, and they're there to help you figure out what kind of fit there might be between you and a particular law school. So talk with admissions. They actually like to interact personally with students. I'd say also visit a law. You can't visit every law school that you might be interested in, but if you've got a short list of law schools, just go visit, see what the place is like on the ground, and there you can actually engage in conversations that permit you to ask direct questions about the things that matter to you and the qualities of the program that can best benefit you.
Yeah, I would echo everything that's said, but offer a slightly different perspective that I think is important for this group of audience members to hear, which is whether you sort of knock at the door of the admissions office or the career and professional development office or the dean's office or whatever. I'm a firm believer that applicants should never be shy about asking the hard question. So in other words, and I see everyone sort of nodding, I think that sometimes there's a reticence that, am I being too much of a nudge if I ask one more question about housing, or am I bothering the director of Dean Rosenberry's Career and Professional Development Office? I want to know, how many of your graduates did X or Y? And if the first thing I hope you remember is professional freedom, the second thing I hope you remember is that you should never accept an offer of admission from the law school unless you feel really good about it. And if you don't really feel really good about the answers to the questions that you're getting, that should tell you something about the law school. I mean, I was on the phone for a half hour yesterday with somebody from New York who was asking about housing. And for him, that was really important, and so whether it's jobs, housing, bar pass, the atmosphere, classroom, what have you, what Mark said about asking the direct questions, whether it's at a visit or otherwise, by all means, ask the direct questions.
And it's a great point, because although we're all here because our schools are best value schools, it's an investment, right? All of our tuitions are lower than, as a relative matter, but as an objective matter, I mean, you're going to be investing in 3 years, and it's not just money, of course, it's 3 years of your time. And we think it's an investment. There's nothing better to invest in than yourself. So we think it's a great investment, but making sure you're going in eyes open and asking the tough questions. I know we speak for all of our colleagues at 200 law schools across the country that we welcome it. We're happy to answer them. And I can guarantee you there's not a question you're thinking of that we haven't heard before. Many of us have been doing this for 7 or 8 years. And so this is, and so we're happy to answer them.
If there is a question we haven't heard, I'd be interested in hearing it.
Right. We actually will send it to each other on the listserv. Oh my God, I got something I don't know anything about. So that would be great. Yeah. Be active consumers, I guess, is what we would all recommend. Well, speaking of that, and Mark, this is a great question to tee up for you, perhaps, because you've already touched on this a little bit, which is what else can go into creating that valuable law school experience aside from affordable tuition? And you gave us some of the things, but I didn't know if there's a couple of those that you really kind of wanted to hit on for the audience, and then I'll open it up to others.
Yeah, I think Bo's earlier observation about the knowing and not knowing what you might want as you come into law school is important. What I try to emphasize to students who come into law school is the virtue of surprise. I met with a group of students just last week, in fact, and we were talking about their experience so far in law school. They're 1Ls and talking about their experience and whether their perspective on their trajectory toward the profession has changed in any way. And for several of them, their preconception had changed, that they came into law school thinking, oh, I definitely want to do this. And then over the course of even one semester, which is not a long time, but over the course of a semester, they realized that there were possibilities that they had not thought of coming into law school, and possibilities that may influence their preferences as they enter the profession. So I would say, educate yourselves broadly, educate yourselves in challenging classes, and many of those are bar prep classes, but some will not be bar prep classes, and leave yourselves open to the element of surprise. Take advantage of a quality curriculum that's available to you in law school, wherever you go. And so that's number one. I'll just say one other thing. When I was in law school, my mantra was, try not to talk to the professor outside of class. That's a bad mantra. Professors today expect to be able to talk with you, and at Alabama, as well as at any of the law schools here and many of the law schools that are not here, professors actually cherish the ability to talk with students outside of class. And this can be solving a problem that you encountered in class that is a doctrinal problem or a logical problem, an analytical problem, or it could be something even, personal. So take advantage of the resources that professors provide when you're in law school, and administrators for that matter.
Great, thanks, Mark. Yeah, thanks, Mark. Anybody else want to jump in? We've talked about culture and CDO, the career development opportunities, a little bit about externships. Anything else you think? Mental well-being, things that go into that law school experience that people ought to consider. So many of those. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
Sure. One thing I'll add too is actually going off something that Dean Rosenberg had said about engaging with alumni and finding out what the experience was like for them, what their career trajectories were. And especially if you are a student who may not know where you want to end up, or if you think you know where you want to end up, but might change, as Dean Brandon had indicated, it's always nice to hear stories of other folks' paths, because oftentimes as you're hearing those stories, you're going to feel the connections. Something is going to resonate with you. And so getting broad-based information on what an alumni's experience was like has been, especially given that they are a few years removed from the actual toil and trouble of going through law school. Don't get me wrong, speak to our students as well. But it's good to have that 50,000-foot perspective from alumni. And I bet you they'll talk about some things that you may not even realize were going to be valuable to you, but just in hearing a plethora of stories, you could connect with something and think about something you had never previously thought about before.
That's great. Thanks, Lauren.
And most admissions offices will connect you with alums during your decision-making process. And I take advantage of that. Don't be shy in asking the alums questions, direct questions as well. And then once you're at a law school, most law schools will have alums coming into the law school on a weekly, sometimes daily basis, and also will be willing to connect you with alums who aren't able to travel, but are willing to Zoom or talk by phone or email. So, do not be shy about connecting with that alumni network.
That's great. So we've talked about so many, I'll just say soft pieces of information, right? That are not in a data point necessarily that you get from visiting the law school. And of course, if you've gone to any of our websites or you looked at any of our materials or you talk to people like Lauren in our admissions, we're going to present you with this kind of best view of ourselves, right? And our idealistic view of ourselves. So let's get a little bit more gritty though, and say, if somebody's visiting, one way to kind of really find out about a school that's not part of our production value is we're going to give you names of our alums. And, we know they're going to be supporters most likely, but we don't know exactly what they're going to say. It's not like we train them. How else would you all recommend if someone's coming to your school, what should they look for to kind of get the unvarnished view of your school? I mean, I think about, and we put students in a classroom and have them see a class, but I don't always know that we tell them, here's some things that you might want to look for and how people interact. I mean, people have a gut reaction to this, but what would you all recommend when somebody walks through your door so they can get a true look of what your community is really like? I know we're all proud of it.
So one thing I would recommend, and this again is sort of predicated on Mark's assumption that you visit the school. I would say many schools have like a cafe or some sort of student gathering point. And it may seem a little bit passive, but I think there's something to be said for basically just parking yourself in that cafe for a half hour without some admissions person hovering over you and just see what you observe.
Lauren, and he meant hovering in the best possible way.
I did mean that. So you didn't have a sign on you that says, "Hi, I'm an admitted student."
No, I think just observing that's really
watch the organic flow of the school.
Yeah. How about in a classroom? What would you recommend students kind of pay special attention to?
I would think the level of engagement in the classroom is key. Some professors are real masters at what they do. They are just, they have an ability to teach and to connect at a level that I can only aspire to. But see what the quality of instruction from the professor looks like, but also pay attention to the quality and type of interaction between students and professor and among students. Do they engage with one another? Are they riffing on things that have gone on earlier in the classroom? Just, there are elements of the classroom experience that are pretty subtle, but just pay attention to how those conversations unfold. It's not just, do you have a great teacher in front of the room? Do you have classmates who are also engaged and engaging in the classroom? I'd pay attention to that.
Yeah. We've talked so much about what the school provides, but of course, a lot of the educational experience comes from your classmates, and those will be your colleagues for the rest of your life. I mean, especially at kind of larger flagship state schools, I'll say, our alumni are throughout the state and throughout the region, and those are the people you're going to know who were your classmates. It's great. Well, Lauren, let me ask you a kind of our last question that we talked about, and then we can open it up, or we can talk about some other things. But we've just mentioned kind of the bar pass percentage, right? The percentage of students who pass the bar exam, and that's part of what is used to rank best value. How do schools maintain that? How do they increase bar passage rates? What goes on in that particular? And just to be clear, so the bar exam, I mean, many of you will probably know this, but just so we're all on the same page, you go through 3 years of law school, but before you can become a practicing lawyer in every jurisdiction in the country, you'll need to pass an exam that's taken in the summer in July after you graduate. And so passing that will actually enable you to practice law. There are lots of jobs you don't have to pass the bar for, and a JD is really helpful for. But to be a lawyer, got to pass the bar exam. So it's pretty crucial. So tell us a little bit, Lauren, about what schools do for that.
Sure, absolutely. So first, I'm going to talk historically about what bar prep really meant maybe 20 years ago. And for a lot of folks, bar prep centered on a very narrow period of time between when they graduated their third or fourth year as an evening student and when you take that July bar exam that Richard was mentioning. So there is a crunch time there. And in that period, most students will register for a third-party bar preparation course, not necessarily affiliated with their own law school. Some examples: Kaplan, Themis, Barbary, those sorts of things. And that is still a crucial bedrock foundational element of preparing yourself thoroughly for the bar. But what we have seen is that law schools have, taken some of the burden off of just the students themselves and their engagement with these third-party bar prep companies in order to make sure you are being prepared throughout your entire legal education to take this very critical licensing exam and requirement. So there are 3 areas that I've seen law schools really grow in supporting bar prep and in ensuring that students are passing the bar. And the first of that is curricular. One thing you should know in terms of subject matter that is tested most frequently on the bar, those are our required 1L courses: contracts, civil procedure, torts, criminal law, constitutional law. So that's already as prescribed by the ABA, which is our accrediting body, that we must teach you these classes. And so the strength of the professors in that 1L curriculum really is important, and law schools are paying attention to who is teaching those 1L curricular offerings. In addition to that, there is a required legal writing element, legal writing course that is going to help you all throughout your law school career, but certainly with answering essay questions on the bar exam. You're going to learn a format called IRAC. And that is, by the way, law schools, we love acronyms. So that's just the first of many you're going to get along your journey. So, curricular wise, there's been a lot of emphasis placed on expanding offerings that are going to help you for the bar exam. And actually in 2008, there was a shift with the ABA. Previously, the ABA didn't allow law schools to offer credit for courses that were meant to prepare students for the bar exam. Well, that has since changed. And so you're going to see it in many law schools across the country that in their third year or fourth year, if you're an evening student, you can actually take classes often titled Advanced Analytical Skills. And those are true almost bar prep classes. That is the pre-prep you get before you enroll in that third-party bar preparation course. So many law schools have added that to their curriculum for credit. And so it's always good when you are talking about law schools and finding who's going to help you pass the bar to see what upper level courses there may be that are designed specifically to train you for the skills you need to pass the bar. So curricular is one area we've seen growth. Outside of curricular, but tangentially related, are things like skill building workshops. Many law schools have instituted offices of bar success, directors of bar exam success, all kinds of variations on that professional title. And those offices offer workshops, again, throughout the entire duration of your law school career. How to write that bar exam essay, introducing you to the elements of the bar exam, the MBE. See, I told you there was another acronym coming. The multi-state bar exam, the essay writing portions, the MPRE element, the CNF, I know acronyms, the character and fitness elements. So there's a lot of support outside of curricular for credit classroom learning that I cannot recommend you engage in highly enough. Another element that's in this bucket for me are also baby bar exams. So some law schools have started to offer essentially an early mock version of the bar exam. Some schools offer that after your first year of law school to give you that taste of what you might see coming down the pike. So there are things outside of that curricular. And then the final bucket of areas in which law schools have really increase their resources and attention is the mental health and wellness surrounded around taking the bar. I mean, taking the bar, it really is a marathon. It is not something you can, crunch study for. It is something that is going to take everything you've got, all of that mental energy, but also that emotional energy too. And so we've seen law schools really up their game in terms of providing bar mentors. So again, talking about our alumni network and alumni who want their current student body at their alma mater to succeed. So we at UConn Law can pair you with a practicing attorney, just if you need a cheerleader in your corner, right? We also have found at UConn Law that students who are studying for the bar exam on campus have highest success rates. And so we incentivize on-campus studying. We offer bar study break sessions so that you can take a step back, because sometimes when you're in the middle of it, it's really hard to break out. And for your mental health, you're going to need to take some breaks. And then in talking about the effects of the pandemic on the bar exam, many bar exams moved remotely, which provided some extraordinary circumstances and extraordinary hardships for students. For our students who are parents and have a 2 and a 4 and a 6-year-old running around the house, the thought of taking a digital bar exam in their home was just unthinkable. And so law schools have stepped up to the plate to maybe provide resources to put you up in a hotel for the evening so that you can take that bar exam, uninterrupted, somewhere where you have good Wi-Fi access so you don't have to worry about a technical issue occurring during this most important exam of perhaps your life. So there are many ways that law schools are supporting. Those are 3 categories, some examples. But again, any law school is willing to answer these questions. And this is a question you should ask while you're out there law school shopping.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. I know we have some questions in the Q&A that I want to make sure we have time for. But before we leave this topic about the bar, anything my co-panelists want to jump in on and add? That was a great answer, Lauren. Thank you. Well, let me do a question that I think might be in the mind of somebody who isn't so steeped in the law school world is, gosh, let's step back. Why do we need all that stuff that Lauren just mentioned when we've just been to law school for 3 years and we've just invested in all of this tuition for this exam at the end? Shouldn't that be enough? Or is law school doing something else besides just preparing for the bar? Let's talk about that disconnect perhaps that it might, or that tension, I guess, that people might be wondering about.
Absolutely. Obviously, the bar exam is sort of a gatekeeping function, and the bar is determined by each state's Supreme Court, and their focus is on protecting the public who will seek to engage in lawyers, and the state Supreme Courts want to ensure that all lawyers have what they call a minimal level of competency, and they believe this exam provides one way of measuring that competency, so the public will be protected and receive worthwhile legal services. But the practice of law is so much broader than that. And of course, you want to find a school that will be supportive in helping you pass the bar and cover some of those bar topics. But there are many topics in law school that are not on the bar exam, but are incredibly important for future jobs and also for our society. So for instance, intellectual property and law and technology, not on any bar exam, at least to my knowledge, but is a growing area of law. And I would argue, every law student needs to have a better understanding of technology and how technology is changing society if they want to be a successful lawyer going forward. There are other, specialized areas, employment law, environmental law, types of administrative law that, do not fall on the bar exam whatsoever, but are crucial for your success in various legal paths. So making sure that your focus is not narrowly on the bar, but is looking at the breadth of the curriculum, as Mark said, and making sure you can engage in all that a law school has to offer.
Great, thanks, Laura. Well, let's we can come back to the bar exam as a topic, but I want to make sure, since we have people asking questions, that we talk about them. So we'll start with the first. I'll just go in the order that I received them. So we're discussing value. The question is, and this is a great question to think about, what's a typical budget law schools have for scholarships? And with the competitive nature of applicants, what are other factors that might influence how we, allocation decisions? I'll say, how do we give out scholarships besides GPA and LSAT scores? As your competitors, I'm interested in your answer. As your competitor, I'm interested in your answer to this too. So let's get the real scoop here.
So I'll start and then I'll be fascinated to hear what my colleagues say. So support for scholarship it is critical to our operation, actually, and it's one way that even if we have lower tuition, we still want to make the cost of attending law school as low as we possibly can. We have not gotten it to zero across the board at this point, but we do want to make it possible for as many people as possible to attend law school without money being a substantial barrier. And so we have a significant portion of our operational budget is committed to scholarships. Where does that money come from? It comes from donations from alumni and friends who have created endowments for scholarships, or maybe non-endowed funds for scholarships for various purposes. We benefit from frankly, being part of a larger and supportive university, and a university that back to the word value, that values what we do, and that wants, and the university wants to support us in what we do. One way universities do that is through programs and other aspects of operations, but another way in which universities can help is through supporting scholarships. So a university can reinforce a scholarship budget in ways that are not trivial, that help to make it possible for students of all backgrounds to attend law school.
So Richard, one thing that I would sort of say to try to drill a little bit into the attendee's question is some schools have sort of put stakes in the ground on certain cohorts of students whom they're going to signal a scholarship commitment to. And Laura Rosenberry at Florida has one that I have a lot of respect for, and I'll let her tell you all about. But for us, sort of two areas where we've sort of put stakes in the ground are veterans and first generation college graduates. So in both cases, going back to something that Mark said, our scholarship budget has a diverse array of sources. But in some cases, in consultation with the donor, either you or the donor may sort of signal, this is a group that we want to benefit, or the donor may say, I want to benefit somebody who's the graduate of an HBCU, and boom, all of a sudden you're announcing the Chester Davenport Scholarship, or for us, the Butler Commitment for Veterans, or a commitment for first generation college graduates. And so I would drill into that question, either based upon something that you identify with, or perhaps just sort of propound it generically as the person in this Q&A did.
Absolutely. And in addition to providing scholarships for first generation college students, which UF Law does similarly to Georgia, we also just started a program. It's now in its second year for graduates from HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. And that scholarship is designated only for those students. And so we had 10 scholarship recipients enroll as 1Ls this past August, and we're hoping to have at least 10 as well. And what I think this highlights is that scholarships serve different purposes. I think the question maybe assumed that they were only based on LSAT and GPA, but in fact, there are a wide variety of different types of scholarships, including many that take into account need. And so if you have a particular need, I encourage you to talk to your admissions office. There's often opportunities to explain your situation and receive a scholarship or an increased scholarship based on your particular needs.
Great. Thanks, Laura. I know many of us have similar scholarships. We have some on leadership, right? So for growing and potential leaders. So, I think the breadth of them is enormous. And I'll just quickly add before we move to the next topic. And at Nebraska, if you apply, we automatically consider you for scholarships. And I'm assuming that's the case everywhere else. Do any of you have specific scholarship deadlines beyond just applications that you want to highlight? So that's really good to know that if you just are applying, we're all going to be putting you in the scholarship and giving you, our best offers when we kind of send out scholarship announcements. Mm-hmm. Great. So the next question is related to course catalog. We've talked about the breadth of curriculum, and Laura talked about a bunch of courses that aren't on a bar exam that you still might want to take. So the question is, how do you find out what the offerings are at a particular law school? Do you make those course catalogs accessible to applicants?
Yes, I think on most of our websites, there are course catalog listings. In the event that it's tricky to find, again, plug for an admissions office. I bet you they know where everything is on the website. And oftentimes folks in the registrar's office, at least at UConn Law, would be happy to talk to you through the course options as well. But our full course catalog, not only for the current term, but for prior terms, also available because some courses are offered on a biannual basis.
Great.
One thing we try to do is to go through the catalog to see what courses may not have been offered within the most recent 2 to 3 years. And if they have not been offered with some regularity in the last 3 years, then we call those from the catalog so that we're fairly transparently and honestly advertising what we actually provide.
That's great. And I know at Nebraska, we sometimes, if you're interested in a particular area, we'll have kind of lists of recommended courses that you might want to take if you're interested in becoming a litigator or transactional attorney, for example. And I'm sure many of my colleagues have a similar type of information available to you. Okay, next question. According to the law school, what's the best way to help you in your educational future? Talent and so it's like, how can you best kind of market yourself, I guess, in your firm? Maybe the way that question's phrased. What's the best way for you to do that, to market yourself coming out of law school as you're looking at firms, perhaps?
Again, I'm going to plug our Centers for Career Development. They have skills sessions on exactly this topic, how to market yourself. And I do see that bilingual was a portion of that. Bilingual attorneys are needed, probably more than ever. And so that is a way to market yourself, going to mock interview programs, which I'm sure all of our law schools have, going to cover letter workshops to ensure that you're getting the point across, having your career development center look at your writing sample. For many firms, many legal jobs will require a writing sample for application. So all of these things are typically housed right in the wheelhouse of our Centers for Career Development, and they can absolutely talk you through what firms are looking for. They have the one-on-one connections with employers, and so they can provide you some really good inside information in terms of what firms are looking for and therefore how best you can market yourself.
Great.
Those are all great. One other possibility in this, I assume that many or most law schools do this, is provide networking opportunities in particular locations in which law schools happen to have, a strong foothold, or maybe not a strong foothold, but want to provide opportunities for students. And so I would suggest just taking advantage of those networking opportunities. For shy people, I'm pretty shy, so it's not a natural thing for me to take advantage of if I were a law student. But I would say overcome your reticence and go ahead, show up and meet some folks. And there is no telling what can happen when you meet somebody, engage in a conversation that you don't expect maybe, and catch the attention of somebody. So
great, thanks. I think this next one we can actually probably just do a thumbs up or quick answer. Have any of you seen scholarships for older students or for seniors? We mentioned a lot of different. So Lauren has. I don't think we have that at Nebraska, so I'd be curious on what that looks like.
Sure. Well, at UConn, we actually do a tuition waiver for all Connecticut residents over the age of 62. So if you are able to, gain admission, we will offer you a tuition waiver. That is codified in statute. So even better than a scholarship, a tuition waiver.
That's great. That's the senior lobby right there. Got that codified in statute. I love it.
And then even going more broadly and beyond that, and some of my colleagues touched on this in a previous question, one of those areas that we are looking to stimulate in law schools is diversity, and diversity of age, diversity in terms of students with disabilities, diversity in terms of students who are first-gen military, from underrepresented minoritized communities. I would go so far as to say that most law schools do have scholarships that will support those very valuable perspectives being added to the legal profession. And certainly in my estimation, having a range of ages in the classroom adds to the depth and dynamic nature of a classroom. And so for scholarships earmarked for general diversity, that's certainly something older students would be considered for at UConn.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. So we've got a couple more that keep rolling in. This is great. I'm glad you all are sending us questions. So we've talked a lot about how we might different things that students and applicants may ask of their staff. So this next question kind of maybe ask for a summary of that. What are the questions that 1Ls or applicants should ask of law school staff or faculty to get that network of support from day one? So I'm going to do, this is the speed round. So I'm going to do quick answers from each of you. You each get one, and we're going to hit them, and I'll go in the order we started. So which is Bo, let me start with you. What question, what's the one question you think that comes top of mind?
Ask if the law school has a dedicated mentorship program that matches you with one or more mentors from the first day you arrive on campus.
All right, I love it. Let's see, who did I go to next? Was that Laura? Let me come to you.
Ask about professor office hours and whether the school has an open door policy or offers Zoom office hours, and otherwise, how accessible are the professors to the students? Perfect. Mark?
I would ask about the full range of services that the Career Services Office provides, the type of programs that they offer, the frequency of programs, and the engagement that they can provide.
Great. Lauren?
And I'm going to round it off with alumni. Ask about Alumni Connections, very similar to what Bo had said about connecting with mentorship programs, either with current students, but also with alumni.
Great. And while I have you, Lauren, there's a really just follow-up response on that tuition waiver only for Connecticut residents?
Yes.
All right, there we go. We just got that done. All right. So this is my favorite question as people start thinking about their summer before law schools. What are some of the ways, and I just won't say an undergrad student, what are some of the ways anybody can best prepare emotionally and educationally for their first year of law school? What are specific tips that you'd want someone to tell you? And I'll take the moderator's privilege and I'll just start and say, sleep in the summer, rest. I mean, we've got a bunch of books. I'm sure we have books that our admission office gives you some reading, and I think that's great. I'd read for pleasure. I'd take some time and really reflect on why you're doing what you're doing, because you're getting, when you start, it is a lot. It is a lot of information coming at you really quickly, and you want to be as kind of well rested and set up for it as best you can. So that's my one little hit. Anybody else got something they'd like to add?
I'll make a suggestion of what not to do. And this comes from personal experience. I actually agree with your recommendation. Rest and read for pleasure, and stay in touch with your purpose, what's taking you to law school. But the thing not to do is exactly what I did, which was a month or two before I went to law school. I don't know if this plays in popular culture anymore. There's a book and a movie called Paper Chase. And I went with a friend to see Paper Chase, and it was about a crushing experience of a group of 1L students, and it freaked me out. So I advise against seeing Paper Chase or a movie like that.
So what I'm taking from some of your comments, Mark, is you messed up before you went to law school. In law school, you avoided professors, and now you're a dean. So, right, there's no mistake that you can make that you can't overcome.
There's that is true.
That's great. We have just a few minutes left. I promised you that at some point we'd show you where you might find some of this information. When we all met before this to kind of talk about what we wanted to say, we thought, we knew there's a lot of information out there, but you may not know where it is. So I'm going to quickly share my screen. My panelists graciously allowed me to use Nebraska's website to show you this. And so hopefully, is that screen share coming through?
It is.
Yep. Okay, great. So this is just our homepage, right? If you go down to the bottom, it's be at different places for different schools, but there almost will always be some link that says consumer information, ABA required disclosures. Sometimes it's called the 509 disclosures. Most schools will have that somewhere pretty easily accessible. So if you click on that, for us, what you would wind up with is a lot of different consumer information, really probably more than most people can digest, but here's all the things that you could find out about Nebraska law that's out there in pretty summary standard reports. If you click on this 509 report, it's actually a PDF. So I'm going to try and share a different part of my screen so you can see what one of the basic reports looks like. If I can do this well under pressure. Uh-oh, too much pressure. Here we go. You'd think after 2 years, I'd be slightly faster, but here we are. So this is our 509. This is the same format for every law school. There's actually a web page. I don't have it pulled up, but if you Google ABA 509 disclosure reports, there's a website, and you can just pick schools and it'll download it for you. There's one for year. They go back several years. In this, you'll see some of the basic information about deadlines in the calendar, some of it about curricular offerings, some historic information about LSAT and GPA for different percentiles. So remember, this is just the percentiles just mean that that's where you might fall in the class. These are not cutoffs. I think that's important to remember. If you kind of scroll through this, I know I'm going through it fast, but if there are other things that people think we ought to be highlighting, jump in, just unmute. This will tell you kind of some of the diversity breakdown of a school, and that may be important to you as you look through. Same for degrees awarded, same for faculty. So you can kind of see how a school is represented I think that might be important. Here, they'll always give you the 1L tuition and fees. So you'll notice it's not free to go annually to Nebraska here, all these zeros. All this means is that we're a school that charges you by the credit hour. And so other schools will charge you one fee for the entire year. Ours is by the credit hour. You can figure out how much, and we have on our webpage actually if you did a normal 1L curriculum, what that would be. It's just not able to do it in this. And then some of you asked about the scholarships and what percentages of people get scholarships, or you asked about the budget, but this is actually what percentages of the people get scholarships. So you can see how it all breaks down, how many students we have, how many receive grants, and then what different percentiles are. Again, I know we have 1 minute left. So this is an important one, this conditional scholarship, whether you get to keep your scholarship and what are the conditions for that, according to the policies of the school. So those reports, I think, are pretty important if you want to take a look at those. All right, I think we're out of time. I want to be respectful of your time. Let me just thank you, panelists. You all were amazing. It was so good to be able to talk with you and hear about all the things you have going on in your great law schools. So thanks. Andrew, anything else we need to do?
No, I just wanted to personally thank you as well for all the panelists today. We've had some really good discussion and thoughts on all these different topics. So I just appreciate your time today.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. And I guess I see we had a couple more questions in the Q&A. I'm sure I speak for my colleagues when I say, if you email us, we'll respond. You can find our emails on our websites, and I take direct emails, and I'm sure my colleagues do as well. So feel free to reach out.